So today we're going to talk about 3 of the movies Warner Archive released this month, March 2023. Those are Camille, Confessions of a Nazi Spy, and Flamingo Road. How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Cobwebs channel where we dust off old movies. My name is Daniel, and Warner Archive released 6 Blu-rays this particular month. And yes, I'm going to be talking to you about half of them. I will address the other half at the end of the video and why I'm not talking about those today. If you're interested in a particular Blu-ray, I've got timestamps down in the description below. You can click on that to skip right to the disc you're interested in. But basically, I'm going to be talking to you about what these movies are about, what I think their quality is, show you the actual physical release, and recommend if I think it's worth a pickup or not. And of course, special features, we'll talk about that as well. So let's kick off with the first movie that Warner Archive released this month. That is Camille from 1936. This is directed by George Cukor. This is starring Greta Garbo and Robert Taylor, or as the cover shows you, Greta Garbo loves Robert Taylor. That's what they call marketing kids. So basically what this movie is about, and it's based on an Alexander Dumas novel, and this is one of several adaptations of it, actually. This was a very famous story. It's just, I don't feel like its fame is really stretched into today, but this Blu-ray release is trying to make a dent in that. And it's starring Greta Garbo as the main character, Marguerite. I was shocked to find out her name is not Camille. That's more referring to her profession. And what the movie is about is she is essentially a kind of prostitute, or you might say a kept woman. She's one of several women in Paris. They make their money just off of being companions to very rich and wealthy men who just want women around whenever they want them, and they get a lot of presents, they get money, they get their rent paid for and such. And I've talked to you a lot about the Hays Code, because if you talk about classic Hollywood movies, you kind of have to. And I do think there are certain stories that are done a disservice by being told under the Hays Code, because there are too many restrictions on that story that kind of hurt that particular story. It doesn't happen. I love classic Hollywood films. It does not happen to all classic Hollywood films. But I think it happened to this one, because this is about pretty salacious adult subject matter, and being made under the Hays Code, they have to be extremely subtle about it. And honestly, maybe I'm dense. It took me a long time to figure out that's her profession. For a long time, I thought this was kind of a Pride and Prejudice kind of situation. This is about women trying to land rich husbands. And that's not the case. This has nothing to do with husbands. It's just about, this is how I make money, is just by being a companion to men. But essentially the main conflict of the movie is she falls in love with Robert Taylor, who is not a rich man, not a dirt poor man, but just kind of an average guy. But he can't give her the kind of lifestyle she's accustomed to. And that causes a lot of conflict. And it also causes a lot of conflict that she is a woman who is not known as respectable. Like I said, she's essentially a prostitute, and that causes his family to have a lot of animosity towards her, because she might hold back his profession and his reputation from being able to get ahead in life. How did I feel about this movie? Well, first of all, Greta Garbo is phenomenal in it. She is by far the reason to see it. If you hear anybody or hear or read anybody talk about this movie, they will tell you Greta Garbo is the reason to watch it. She's awesome. She is very naturalistic. It's not an over-the-top performance at all. Very sympathetic, emotional. The movie is extremely empathetic towards her character and the kind of plight that she has in life. And I just loved her in the movie. I know her primarily from Ninotchka, Ernst Lubitsch movie, which she's awesome in, but she's probably even better in this movie. So phenomenal Greta Garbo. Robert Taylor is okay. I primarily know Robert Taylor from, you know what, let me grab it. Ivanhoe, another Warner Archive release. This is primarily where I know Robert Taylor from, and I do love Ivanhoe, but this is a movie where I feel like Robert Taylor, I love the movie in spite of him, not because of him. He's kind of flat, but the movie around him is so good. I feel similarly about Camille. He is okay, but I feel like every time I watch a Robert Taylor movie, I always think, man, if this was Errol Flynn, this would be so much better. Like, I feel like he is dime store Errol Flynn. Does that ruffle some feathers? Are there some Robert Taylor fans that are mad at me right now? Perhaps. But like I said, I thought the Hays Code ends up doing this movie a disservice, because it's about some very adult subject matter that it can't really dig into in a particularly meaningful way. So there's a remove, I feel like. There is a block between the audience and the story because of the content restrictions of the time. I do think that's a problem. That's my personal opinion. I think Robert Taylor is okay. I don't think he's great as a romantic lead. The reason to watch it is Greta Garbo. So I give this a mild recommendation. I liked it. It's a beautiful costume drama in terms of costumes and sets and period recreation. So that's all very cool. I am a fan of a romantic drama. This is primarily a melodrama. It's not a movie that I loved, but as far as special features, that is notable to note because it includes a whole other movie. There was a 1921 silent version of the movie starring Rudolph Valentino, who is a very famous silent film actor, and that entire film is included on the disc. It's restored very well. I don't know if it was restored before this release or not, but I can tell you it looks excellent. I didn't watch the movie in entirety, but interestingly enough, it takes place in the 1920s. It's not a period piece like this. They took the story into the modern age, so that's interesting to know. But you get 2 movies with this release. It's also got a Love is on the Air radio promo and a theatrical reissue trailer. Next up, let's talk about what I would say is my favorite movie from this stack, and that is Confessions of a Nazi Spy. This is from 1939, and it's starring Edward G. Robinson, and essentially this movie is straight up propaganda. Like, it is not subtle about it whatsoever. This is not unbiased filmmaking in any sense of the word. This is a movie with a very interesting historical importance because it was clearly made to kick America in the pants to join World War II. 1939, America had not, the United States had not joined World War II at this point in history, and this movie is all about Nazis are bad, they're in America, they're trying to destroy America, we can't ignore this problem in Europe anymore, we have to get involved. And that's the point of the entire movie. It doesn't so much have a straight up lead character. I would not even say Edward G. Robinson is the lead of the movie, he's just the biggest star. It jumps perspectives quite a bit. In fact, I would say the whole first third pretty much focuses on the Nazi spy, the title character, I guess you would say. And just seeing his life in America, why he's mad at America, why he's mad at his family, why he ends up sympathizing with the Nazis and gets on board with their ideology, and why he decides to become a spy. George Sanders is in this movie, who I primarily know, again, another Warren Archive release, Village of the Damned. He's the lead in Village of the Damned, among a lot of other things. He is a Nazi who ends up hiring the Nazi spy. He's got a crew cut, he's got a German accent. Never seen George Sanders like that before, but enjoyed it because George Sanders is an excellent actor. And all that stuff, just looking at the movie following Nazis in America, is fascinating. And then I'd say once we get into like the second half, it starts focusing on Edward G. Robinson, an FBI agent, and the Americans trying to take down these Nazis and trying to catch these spies. And the storytelling here is not particularly sophisticated. It does feel antiquated in a lot of ways, and that it relies on a lot of narration, exposition from an impartial narrator who talks like this. And, it feels very old-fashioned. And it doesn't really focus on character. It's just focusing on scenarios and such like that. So it's not a sophisticatedly, whatever. It's not told brilliantly, but I thought its historical importance was so interesting. There's a point where a lawyer is in a courtroom and he's speaking literally directly to the camera about how bad Nazis are and how we can't ignore this problem anymore, and America's got to do something about it. Like I said, this movie is propaganda. There's no other way to say it, but it's not propaganda used for malicious purposes like the propaganda featured in the movie from the Nazis. And considering, we know where history went, we know America joined the war, we know the war was won, the Nazis were defeated. It ends up just being a highly politically charged movie that is just so interesting to watch as a historical document. So I really enjoyed the movie. I thought it was so interesting. I loved Edward G. Robinson in the movie. I mean, he's the biggest star for a reason. He's excellent in the movie. I find that, so Edward G. Robinson, I feel like these days, he's primarily known for gangster movies. But I prefer Edward G. Robinson when he is the incredibly noble, good person on the side of the law. Whether it be in this movie, Double Indemnity, where he's just this highly professional guy who's like, well, there's some bad guys out there and I'm going to do everything possible to take them down because I'm an awesome dude. I'm Edward G. Robinson. And that's like my favorite mode for Edward G. Robinson. I thought he was awesome in this movie. It made me want to go on a big Edward G. Robinson kick, which fits because I got a couple more of his movies sitting behind me there that I haven't watched yet. It's got the least impressive set of special features from all these releases. It's got a vintage Warner Brothers short, Meet the Fleet. Haven't actually watched that yet, as well as the theatrical trailer. So that is Confessions of a Nazi Spy. Is YouTube going to get mad that I'm saying the word Nazi so much? I swear this is not This is just a Blu-ray review, man. I'm not trying to do anything bad here. I recommend that. I really do. Next up, let's talk about Flamingo Road, starring Joan Crawford. Jumping ahead 10 years, this is from 1949, and this is from the period of Joan Crawford's career where maybe it's starting to wind down a little bit, but she's still pretty much in her prime. She hasn't fallen into the William Castle movies by now or such. I love William Castle, don't get me wrong. And this movie feels very much like, hey, Mildred Pierce was popular. Mildred Pierce was a big hit. Let's kind of do that again. It actually reminds me a lot of Howard Hawks' To Have and Have Not, which I really like. But when I watched that movie, I thought, well, this is very much, hey, Casablanca was big. Let's kind of do that again. And that's what this feels like with Mildred Pierce. It's also directed by Michael Curtiz, the same as Mildred Pierce. It's actually got a similar supporting cast even. And what the movie is essentially about, it actually follows some similar themes as Camille, where she is a carnival girl. It's in a salacious show where they do belly dancing kind of things. And because their show is a little too sexy, the sheriff tries to kick them out of town. The carnies leave, but she decides, hey, I'm tired of running from town to town. I want to settle down somewhere. I'm staying right here. She meets the deputy sheriff and they kind of bond immediately and they start dating and she gets a job there and she's kind of living a good life. But the sheriff of this town is played by Sidney Greenstreet, and he has got big plans for his deputy sheriff. He's kind of a kingmaker kind of guy where he likes to prop people up so that they can achieve political office so he can control them from behind the scenes. And that's what he plans for his deputy sheriff, and he knows that's never going to happen if his deputy sheriff is dating a former carnival girl, Joan Crawford. So it's about the sheriff ruining her life, the deputy sheriff being a weak, pathetic moron who lets it all happen and crumbles under the pressure from Sidney Greenstreet, and then Joan Crawford coming back and getting revenge. And that premise sounds awesome, and I would say the movie is pretty close to lives up to that. The reason to watch it in this case, I think it's Sidney Greenstreet. He's awesome as this sheriff. He is a total vile, despicable scumbag. He's just a villain that you love to hate, and I really enjoyed his performance in particular. I like Joan Crawford in the movie. I think she seemed weirdly old for this part. Not to say that like she's not attractive, she's still a gorgeous woman, but it was a few years earlier that she had played like the mom of a teenage girl. She was definitely getting a little bit older, and this seemed like a part written for a younger woman. So it was a little bit odd to see, but always enjoy watching Joan Crawford. I was actually trying to figure out why I didn't have a stronger reaction to this movie, and I think it's that it did feel like lesser Mildred Pierce. And I just watched Mildred Pierce for the first time. I talked about it in my favorite movies of 1940s video. And it did feel like we're doing that movie, but it's just not quite as good this time. In fact, I would say not even close to as good. But it's still a good Hollywood 1940s movie with particularly good performance from Sidney Greenstreet. And overall, I think it's a pretty good movie. So as far as special features, it's got one special feature that I absolutely loved called Crawford at Warner's. It's about Joan Crawford's career at Warner Brothers. It's a very well-produced featurette, so interesting about her career. In fact, my only bummer with it is that it wasn't longer. When it ended her career with Warner Brothers and said, what happens next in her career, I wanted it to keep going. Apparently, I just need to watch a whole documentary about Joan Crawford. A controversial old Hollywood figure, but a pretty impressive one on the screen for sure. It's also got a breakdown of 1949, which I wasn't sure what that was going to be. I was like, ooh, it's all about the movies of 1949. It's a blooper reel. It's a blooper reel of movies from a variety of movies from 1949. Strange, but entertaining for sure. Got a classic cartoon. I always love classic cartoons. This one's called Curtain Raiser. It's got an audio only bonus, a radio adaptation with the film stars. I always think that's really interesting when the radio adaptations of movies are preserved on the discs. I'm glad that happens. I'm glad those don't fade off into nothing. And it's got a theatrical trailer. So those are 3 of the films released by Warner Archive. Those are Camille, Confessions of a Nazi Spy, and Flamingo Road. Warner Archive released 3 other movies, The Prince and the Showgirl, starring Laurence Olivier and Marilyn Monroe, which I also bought, but there's something weird is going on with this release. They're just not shipping it out. It took forever, way longer than the rest of them for it even to get put on for pre-order, and it's technically out now. Its street date was, a few days ago, but they still haven't shipped it, and no outlet that I've checked seems to say that it would come any earlier than like April. So I don't know what's going on with that, but I will get that. I will review it eventually. They also released I'll Cry Tomorrow, which honestly is a movie that nothing I heard about it sparked my interest, to be honest. Am I wrong about that? Is that a great movie? Let me know in the comments below if you think so. And Neptune's Daughter, starring Esther Williams, which I've seen And I'll be honest, I don't really like that movie. I'm not a big Esther Williams fan, and a lot of people love her. She's just one of those classic film stars that just, I'm not into her, and I didn't care for that movie that much. It's okay. So I didn't buy that, but I bought these three, and I will have a review of Prince and the Showgirl coming out soon. Thank you so much, as always, for watching the Cobwebs channel. Always love talking to you guys on these videos. Talk to me in the comments down below. What do you think of these movies? What Warner Archive releases this month are you picking up, if any? If not, let me know why that down below. Let's just chat. Give a like if you enjoyed this video, and a subscribe if you want to hear more about old movies. Thank you so much. I will see you next time.